She was told her look would never sell. Too dark, too masculine, too aggressive. Fashion executives literally said her face was unmarketable to American audiences. But here's what those same executives didn't see coming. Today, Grace Jones's image licensing alone generates millions annually. Every major fashion house has tried to recreate her aesthetic. And the woman they said was too strange for fashion became the blueprint that luxury brands still pay fortunes to copy. This isn't just the story of a model who broke barriers. This is the story of a woman who turned rejection into a business empire worth over $50 million, who transformed her greatest perceived weaknesses into her most profitable assets, and who built a brand so powerful that 40 years later, designers still can't escape her influence. You think you know Grace Jones, the intimidating icon who slap-talk show hosts and terrified the fashion world? You're about to discover the calculated business mind behind the chaos, the strategic moves that built an empire, why her revolution continues to generate revenue today, and why her iconic look became a defining symbol of the 80s that no one has ever forgotten. Spanish town, Jamaica. Picture a little girl in a Pentecostal household so strict that secular music was banned. Makeup was the devil's work, and discipline meant getting beaten with a belt. Grace Beverly Jones grew up in a world of thou shalt not. Her grandparents saw sin in everything, especially in a young girl who might dare to dream beyond church walls. I was beaten for the slightest thing, Grace would later recall. If I looked at myself in the mirror too long, that was vanity. If I walked with too much confidence, that was pride. Everything about being a young woman was somehow wrong. But Grace found small rebellions. She'd sneak into her aunt's room and try on lipstick, studying her reflection with fascination rather than shame. I remember thinking, this is what I'm supposed to look like. She said in a 2015 interview, not the plain, modest girl they wanted me to be. When she was 13, Grace left Jamaica to join her parents in Syracuse, New York. The goodbye with her grandmother was devastating. She held me so tight and whispered, "Don't let them change you, child." I didn't understand what she meant then. I thought she was talking about America. Now I know she was talking about the world. If you think moving to America meant freedom, think again. Her parents had become ministers themselves. The rules followed her across the ocean, but so did her quiet determination to be something more. Grace would plaster her bedroom walls with pages torn from Vogue, studying the models' faces like other teenagers studied textbooks. I wasn't looking at their clothes, she remembered. I was looking at their eyes. They looked like they knew secrets. I wanted to know secrets too. 18-year-old Grace Jones walked into Wilhelmina Models in New York with her portfolio and a heart full of hope. They looked at her 5'8" frame, her angular features, her dark skin, and basically said, thanks, but no thanks. I cried on the subway home, Grace admitted decades later, not because they rejected me, but because I realized they didn't even see me. They looked right through me like I wasn't there. But here's the thing about Grace Jones. When America said no, she didn't beg or plead or try to change herself. She got on a plane. Paris, different city, same reaction at first. Agents would literally tell her, I can't sell you. You're too dark. But Paris had something New York didn't. An underground fashion scene that was starting to question everything. Grace found her people. She shared an apartment with two other unknown models trying to make it, Jerry Hall and Jessica Lange, 3 future icons crammed into one Paris flat, surviving on hope and whatever modeling jobs they could book. We were so broke, Grace laughed in a later interview. Jerry would steal toilet paper from restaurants. Jessica would flirt with the baker to get day-old bread. I learned to make soup from anything, but we were happy, we were free. They'd share clothes, share food, share dreams of making it big. Jerry would practice her Texas accent in the mirror, Grace remembered fondly. Jessica would rehearse monologues. I would pose. We were all becoming ourselves. None of them knew they were living with future legends. They just knew they were surviving together. Slowly, something shifted. Yves Saint Laurent booked her first. He looked at me and said, "Finally, a face with character." Grace recalled, "I didn't know if that was a compliment, but it felt like one." The moment Grace hit that runway, everything changed. Her walk wasn't like the delicate, demure steps expected of models in the early 70s. She strode down the catwalk with a bold, commanding presence that blended pure theatricality with an androgynous swagger that had never been seen before. Those sharp cheekbones and striking features that had been deemed too much in New York suddenly became weapons of beauty in Paris. Her fearless attitude challenged every notion of traditional femininity, and the fashion world couldn't look away. Then Kenzo called. Then Azzedine Alaïa, Issey Miyake, Thierry Mugler. Each designer saw something different in Grace, but they all wanted that same thing: her fierce, unconventional presence that could transform any garment into a statement. "I realized early that I couldn't be like the other girls," she explained, "so I decided to be like no one else instead." By now, Grace Jones was working constantly, but she wasn't just modeling. She was redefining what it meant to own a runway. Her avant-garde style and commanding walk were making her a trailblazer, forcing fashion to embrace diversity and individuality in ways it never had before. She wasn't just wearing the clothes, she was creating a new language of beauty, one bold stride at a time. Studio 54, the most exclusive nightclub in the world, where Warhol and Jagger and Bowie all came to play. Grace Jones walked in for the first time and felt something she'd never experienced before. "I belong there," she said simply. "For the first time in my life, being different wasn't a problem. It was an advantage." But Grace wasn't just partying. She was networking, learning, building. She watched how Warhol turned art into commerce, how Bowie reinvented himself for profit, how the smart ones built empires while the beautiful ones just got used up. Her record deal with Island Records wasn't just about making music, it was about controlling her image across every possible medium. While other models dabbled in singing as a side project, Grace was building a multimedia empire. "I never wanted to be just a model," she explained. "Models get old, brands last forever." Working with artist Jean-Paul Goude, who became her lover and creative partner, Grace constructed images that still look radical today. But their relationship was more than professional collaboration. "Jean-Paul saw me," Grace said in her memoir, "not the way men usually saw me, as something to conquer or tame. He saw the art in me, he saw the business in me, he saw the future in me." Together, they created the iconic images that defined Grace's aesthetic. But Grace was learning something crucial from Jean-Paul. Every image was an investment in her future earning potential. "Jean-Paul taught me that my face was my factory," she recalled. "Every photograph was manufacturing my brand." Her albums Warm Leatherette and Nightclubbing
where what's happening
generated massive revenue, but more importantly, they established Grace as an artist, not just a model who sang. By now, she commanded fees of $50,000 per show, more than most established rock stars. "I wanted respect," she said. "Not just attention, respect." Her day rate for fashion shoots reached $25,000, 5 times what other top models commanded. But Grace wasn't just expensive, she was worth it. When she appeared in Azzedine Alaïa's campaigns, the designer's revenue increased by 40%. Grace understood something other models didn't, Alaïa said in a 1985 interview. She knew she wasn't selling clothes. She was selling dreams. The Russell Hardy Show incident. Grace slapped the host repeatedly on live television for turning his back on her. The moment became legendary, but Grace's motivation was deeply personal. "He dismissed me," she said years later, "turned away while I was speaking like I was nothing. I've been dismissed my whole life. That night, I decided Never again. The British press went wild. But Grace's business manager saw something else. A publicity moment worth millions. Within weeks, Grace's booking fees doubled. Her album sales spiked. I learned that being dangerous was profitable, Grace reflected, but only if you were dangerous with purpose. Grace Jones was everywhere. Conan the Destroyer, where she played a warrior so fierce that Arnold Schwarzenegger reportedly said she was too tough for him. Then, A View to a Kill, where she nearly stole the Bond film as Mayday. But Grace negotiated something unprecedented for both films, a percentage of merchandise sales featuring her character. She was building generational wealth, not just career success. I watched other beautiful women get used up by this industry, she said. I decided I would use it instead. She was simultaneously a supermodel, music icon, and movie star. But more importantly, she was a business empire, generating over $5 million annually by the mid-'80s. But empires require maintenance, and Grace's was about to face its biggest test. Grace had discovered cocaine. What started as fuel for the Studio 54 party scene had become something darker. I thought I was invincible, Grace admitted in her memoir. I thought I could handle anything. I was wrong. She flew to Jamaica for what she called a holiday and ended up in handcuffs, arrested for cocaine possession, 2 nights in jail. The charges were eventually dropped, but the wake-up call was deafening. Sitting in that cell, I realized I'd become everything my grandparents warned me about, she said. I'd lost myself in the very world I thought I was conquering. Grace checked into rehab, but she also did something smarter. She hired a team of financial advisors to audit her empire while she got clean. What they found was devastating. Her accountant had been stealing from her for years. Over half her money was gone. The betrayal was worse than the addiction, Grace said. I trusted him with everything. He smiled at me while robbing me blind. But Grace's response was strategic. She sued for recovery, restructured her finances, and implemented oversight systems that would prevent future theft. Most celebrities would have been destroyed by this combination of addiction and financial ruin. Grace treated it as a learning experience. Then came the plague. AIDS was taking everyone Grace knew, friends from Studio 54, from Paris, from the fashion world. I watched my chosen family disappear one by one, she said, her voice breaking in a rare 2010 interview. These beautiful, creative souls who had made my world magical. Gone. The loss of her friend Keith Haring hit particularly hard. Keith painted on my body at Studio 54, made me into living art. When he died, I felt like part of my history died with him. Grace quietly began investing in AIDS research and treatment facilities, not for publicity, but because she understood that her community's survival was tied to her own. The woman who'd spent a decade being larger than life suddenly wanted to shrink, to disappear. But her son Paulo wouldn't let her. "Mommy, do you remember when you used to be fun?" he asked her one day. "How come you don't laugh anymore?" That question broke me open, Grace said. My child was asking for his mother back. I realized I'd been so busy being Grace Jones, the brand, that I'd forgotten how to be Grace Jones, the person. Grace sat in an interview and said something that stopped everyone cold. "I'm coming back in every way. I'm over this depression and I don't do drugs anymore." Not, "I'm trying to come back," not, "I hope to come back," but "I'm coming back," period. She focused on what mattered: raising Paulo, rebuilding her finances, rediscovering who she was beneath the persona. "I had to learn to be quiet," she said, "to listen to myself instead of the noise around me. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done." She made a decision that shocked many. She married in a secret ceremony to Attila Altanbey, a Turkish man who'd been working as her bodyguard. "I thought I needed protection," she said later. "I didn't realize I was strong enough to protect myself." The marriage turned dark. Attila became controlling, and Grace had to leave for her safety. They never officially divorced. I learned that sometimes the biggest risk is trusting the wrong person with your vulnerability, she reflected. But Grace was also making strategic investments during these quiet years. Real estate in Jamaica and New York. Art collections that would appreciate over decades. She was building generational wealth, not just comeback money. 19 years after her last studio album, Grace Jones released Hurricane. She was 60 years old in an industry that throws women away at 30. People kept asking if I was making a comeback, Grace said. I told them I never left. I was just getting ready for the next act. The album generated over $3 million in revenue, but more importantly, it reestablished Grace as a relevant artist, not just a nostalgic icon. Then came the moment that proved Grace Jones was truly timeless. Queen Elizabeth II's Diamond Jubilee concert. Grace Jones took the stage at 64 years old and sang Slave to the Rhythm while hula hooping for 4 minutes straight. I practiced for months, she admitted, not because I was nervous about performing, but because I wanted to prove that age is just a number if you refuse to act your age. The performance generated over 50 million social media impressions and led to a resurgence in Grace's commercial value. Her image licensing deals suddenly spiked to over $2 million annually. She released her memoir, I'll Never Write My Memoirs. The title itself a contradiction, a joke, a very Grace Jones way of doing things. I called it that because everyone kept asking me to write my memoirs, she laughed. I wanted to write my story, not my memoirs. Memoirs are for dead people. The book became an international bestseller, generating over $1.5 million in revenue. But Grace was particularly sharp about the new generation copying her style. Lady Gaga, Madonna, Miley Cyrus, Rihanna, she called them all out. I am the blueprint, she wrote, and who could argue? They dress up as though they are challenging the status quo, she said, but by now, wearing those clothes, pulling those faces, revealing those body parts, and doing those dance moves, they are not challenging, they are conforming. On October 16, 2017, official recognition came when Jamaica awarded Grace Jones the Order of Jamaica. At the ceremony, Grace was gracious, grateful, but also reflective. I left Jamaica as a girl who was told she was too much, she said in her acceptance speech. I return as a woman who learned that too much is just enough. Today, Grace Jones is in her 70s. She has a granddaughter now, Paulo's child. And when Grace talks about her, this fierce woman who terrorized the fashion industry becomes soft. She calls me Glam Ma, Grace smiled in a recent interview. She doesn't know I'm supposed to be intimidating. To her, I'm just the grandmother who teaches her to be proud of being different. Her current net worth is estimated at over $50 million, generated through a diversified portfolio that includes real estate, art collections, music royalties, and image licensing. I built something that will outlast me, she said. Not just money, but permission. Permission for other people to be exactly who they are. Grace Jones didn't just survive the industry that tried to destroy her. She outlived it, transformed it, and left it forever changed while building a $50 million empire in the process. I never tried to be like anyone else, she reflected recently. I couldn't if I wanted to. So I decided to be so much myself that everyone else would want to be like me instead. The woman they said was unmarketable created a brand so valuable that luxury companies still pay millions to license her aesthetic. The model they called too aggressive proved that aggression, properly channeled, could be incredibly profitable. Her influence extends far beyond balance sheets. Lady Gaga calls her my personal Jesus, while Beyoncé featured her on Renaissance and channeled her muggler-inflected looks throughout the album's visuals. When Janelle Monáe brought Grace as her guest to the Glass Onion premiere, it wasn't just respect, it was acknowledgement of debt. From Rihanna's androgynous aesthetic to Madonna's provocative persona, from Annie Lennox's bold stage presence to Nicki Minaj's larger-than-life performances, Grace's fingerprints are everywhere. Even fashion titans like Thierry Mugler and Jean-Paul Gaultier openly credit her as their muse for boundary-pushing designs. As DJ Honey Dijon put it about Grace's Walking in the Rain performance, it was animalistic, sexual, and completely self-aware. It changed everything for me. Today, when you see a model who refuses to conform, who demands equal pay, who retains control of their image rights, you're seeing Grace Jones's influence. When fashion brands celebrate diversity not out of kindness, but because it's profitable, that's Grace's legacy too. She proved that the very things that make you unmarketable might be exactly what the market needs. That being different isn't a liability. It's a competitive advantage. "I'm still here," Grace said simply in her last major interview. Still Grace. Still collecting checks from a revolution I started 50 years ago. Still proving that the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to be anything other than exactly who you are. In 2025, as we debate authenticity versus commercial success, as we watch influencers struggle to monetize their personalities, as we see artists fighting for control of their image rights, Grace Jones remains the masterclass in how to do it all. But perhaps the most human truth about Grace Jones is this: beneath all the business strategy, all the calculated moves, all the empire building, was a girl from Jamaica who just wanted to be seen, who wanted to matter, who wanted to prove that different could be beautiful. At the end of the day, she said in a quiet moment during her 2015 book tour, "I just wanted my grandmother to be proud. I wanted to show her that the girl she told not to change had changed the world instead." And her revolution? It's still spreading, one confident step at a time, through every person who looks in the mirror and sees possibility instead of problems. If Grace Jones's calculated rise to empire fascinated you, you need to hear about the supermodel who built an even more controversial legacy. The woman who became the most feared figure in fashion, while amassing a fortune that spans decades. Naomi Campbell's untold story of power, strategy, and the ruthless moves that made her untouchable. Ready for another shocking revelation? Dive into Jerry Hall's devastating betrayal that cost her several $1,000,000. You won't believe what happened to her. Subscribe now and hit that notification bell, because every week we're revealing the business strategies behind the icons who didn't just break into fashion, they broke fashion itself.